In a world where entertainment is viewed as mindless diversion, only good for momentary distraction, you are about to enter a new world, and you will never view entertainment in the same way again. This is Popcorn Theology.
Greetings, programs, movie lovers, and theology nerds. Welcome to Popcorn Theology, where we examine films for where they align with the greatest story and our greatest storyteller, discussing what to receive, reject, and redeem for common ground, fruitful conversation, and mindful movie consumption. I'm James.
I'm Miles.
And with us today is Soren. Welcome, Soren.
Hello. Thanks for letting me join.
Yeah. We are blessed with three generations of different people who like Tron and Tron Legacy to varying degrees. And that's obviously what we are looking at. Both the original film in 1982 and the 2010 sequel, both starring Jeff Bridges and Bruce Boxleitner, a virtual doubleheader. See what I did there? So as we get into these two, we're going to break down each one in turn. But I'm just curious for both you guys. We'll start with you, Miles. What is your history with these films?
You know, I haven't really been much of a Tron fan. I was vaguely familiar with light cycles as a kid. It was just kind of in the milieu. But first one came out in 1982. I came out in 1989. So even by the time I was born, it was kind of old. But the first Tron movie I saw was Tron Legacy, and it was just because it was in theaters and looked interesting. And actually, I didn't really get around to watching the original Tron until after reading Cinemagog, where James is like, it's about the lowest hanging fruit in terms of world building for created in their image. And so it's actually because of you, James, that I went back and watched it. This was probably my second time watching it. I haven't really had too much interaction with it, so I'm actually kind of fresh with Tron. It's not one of my deep loves or anything, but I've enjoyed these movies.
All right, Soren, what about you? I know there's a birthday party involved in some of this.
Yeah, I've always loved Tron's. Yeah, I think it was my 7th birthday. It was themed Tron. I've been obsessed with Tron Legacy mainly for my entire life. It's one of my childhood favorite movies and still kind of one of my favorite movies in general. I have only seen the one like twice because I love Legacy so much, but I'm not super passionate about that one.
The original.
Yeah, the original.
Yeah, like my brother and I, we're going to go watch Tron Ares next week. And he's like, I loved Tron when I was a kid, but this week I've put it on 3 times and I fell asleep 3 times. And he's like, it just doesn't grab as attention like it did when he was a kid. But there's still plenty to enjoy with it.
Well, for me, 1982, I was 9. So this is pretty big and formative for me. And kind of hit in, you had first couple Star Wars movies, you had like you had Raiders of the Lost Ark. Like this was really coming into 1982 was a big year for movies. E.T. the Extraterrestrial, The Thing, Conan the Barbarian. Like it was a big year. In fact, 82 lauded as like kind of the year a lot of huge movies came out of Spielberg, different directors that we like. So it's considered a very interesting year for science fiction and genre films as well. But in the theater, it got lost in the shuffle. But I don't know. A lot of kids I know saw that movie or saw it later when it came out on TV or different things in my generation. And it really became a staple. It didn't do well in the box office, so there wasn't a lot of toys. So it was a big deal if you had a light cycle or you had a Tron action figure because they were actually kind of rare. It was also one of the first times I remember that a movie had a arcade game tie-in. So that also made it kind of big. You're like, oh, I'm playing the video game and I saw the movie, and nowadays that's very commonplace. But 1982,
that seems to be one reason why it was so attractive to a kid. It's like, okay, you're good at playing video games, then you would be ideally set to come in and save the video game world.
Yeah,
right. That's the plot behind the movie.
Well, that's also a piece of the premise of the movie The Last Starfighter too, right? The kid plays a video game and he's so good that they take him to fight in the real war. So now we're probably talking about a movie that might have bypassed Soren.
I have no idea what that is.
Last Starfighter. I'll bet your dad is.
Maybe that one's interesting, but it's kind of like a galaxy, like a serious Galaxy Quest kind of thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
They're heroes. We'll pull them in. But yeah, to dive into Tron, if you don't have any experience with it, Tron is the story of Kevin Flynn, who's a hacker / arcade owner, and he's digitally broken down into a data stream and placed into the games that he played, kind of into the digital world that he's been playing his games in. And there's a villainous software program, the Master Control program, who has dominance over this world. And Flynn joins forces with Tron, a security program that fights for the users. And there's this malware, basically, but installed by Dillinger, who's captured this world. And so Flynn gets put in there because Master Control program is trying to kill him. And he joins forces with Tron in order to overthrow the rule of the Master Control program, and makes friends along the way, makes them believe that there really are users outside of their world, embarks on a quest to find a hidden treasure and to redeem the world, all through the video game skills that he has. And so that's the basic plot of Tron. And for what it's worth, as part of it, Flynn is looking for evidence that the guy who created the Master Control program stole his idea for a game, and that's why he's in control of the company. And so he's also got a personal story of going in there and finding evidence. So it's like it's a treasure hunt, it's a redemption story, it's a gaming story, and a personal redemption. And then it's also just not that deep at the same time.
Wait a minute. Well, Tron was directed by Steven Lisberger and stars, we mentioned Jeff Bridges and Bruce Boxleitner, show up in both films, but also David Warner, a veteran actor, Cindy Morgan, and Bernard Hughes, also another familiar face from that decade. And Tron was actually one of the cinema's earliest films to use extensive computer-generated imagery. In fact, I don't know if you guys know the anecdote. It was denied being entered into the Oscars for like best visual effects because they said they cheated because they used a computer.
That's
used
crazy.
a calculator on the
Yeah, I mean that was the line of thinking. You think about that now. It's like, oh, you used a computer for your effects. That doesn't count.
That's crazy.
Now we're contemplating completely generated actresses, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, what's sad also is that if you actually watch the movie now, you probably do realize, looking back, except for the light cycles and the tanks, like honestly, most of what you're seeing is traditional cel-shaded animation. Like all the lit up costumes that they have, like people were going in and animating the light, like all those were cell by cell shaded. So most of the movie actually is regular style visual effects.
How much time it took to run a little light across somebody's head.
Yeah.
Like, it's amazing.
Like every frame.
Yeah. That is it. Yeah. So it's just like doing animation. So they were robbed on two fronts. I think they should retroactively give it a 80s honorary award for pioneering. Yeah. Because now that's commonplace. So, all right. So popcorn ratings then. You guys have already given little hints about maybe where you're at with this movie. But what would you say? Obviously, we say it's either stale, or maybe it's fresh, or maybe it's so good it's buttered and salted, or somewhere in between. Where do you fall on it, Miles?
I mean, if I was 9 years old when this came out, it would have blown my mind, just off of my body. But for me, it's just kind of in the middle, fresh. It's a little slow, but it's really charming. It's really fascinating to think about the way they made this movie in retro, like the talent that they had to have to put some of these things together, having not done it before. And then, just for what it's worth, I found it interesting that Flynn has kind of a Han Solo, Tony Stark, Star-Lord swagger all the way back in 82. Like, he's cracking jokes, like, the whole time. And my first experience of Flynn was Tron Legacy, where he's very serious. And so that was, like, kind of a surprise.
Oh, yeah.
And then in the end, it's kind of like a swashbuckling treasure hunt heist movie. And so it's solid fresh. It's good fun. If you can stay awake through it.
All right. This thing's under 90. It's like 90 minutes.
No, it's great. It's just that it's not as exciting for all the computer generated imagery, but it's fun. I liked it.
All right. What about you, Soren?
I would agree. It's definitely really fresh. It's a good fresh, but I wouldn't put it in buttered and salted. I think I have the same reaction to Legacy as you guys, or you, James, had to this one. So this one's a little dated in comparison, actually a lot.
Yeah.
But
no one's disputing that.
It's super dated. The costumes, while they look cool, they're kind of weird at times.
I think why is Cindy Morgan the only one wearing like the equivalent of Ugg boots? She's got these huge boots on. I don't know what that.
Yeah.
Sometimes suits look like they were purchased at like one of those Halloween stores. Like,
Spirit Halloween.
Spirit Halloween.
We could find them at Spirit Halloween now.
Yeah. And they might look better than the ones in the movie.
They might.
Yeah.
But yeah, the vibes and the atmosphere is the best part. It's very watchable, surprisingly, for how dated it is. And it's honestly not that boring, even though the plot is very simple. So it's great.
Yeah. Well, encountering it again, I'm just going to be an unabashed nostalgia fanboy and say buttered and salted. So I'll break the tie here. But recognizing that, okay, I understand the reason it's buttered and salted is because I saw it at 9 years old. It's always going to have some kind of tug to that young part of me. But watching it again this time, I think part of the reason I still think it's fresh is we were actually talking with some friends who came over, and I was like, it's Alice in Wonderland. Like, yeah, it's simple. I mean, you have a character tumble down a rabbit hole into a kind of crazy different world and have to interact, and there's not the evil queen trying to chop off his head, but somebody, like, you have all these weird characters, and then they get run back up the rabbit hole at the end, and it's like, okay, this follows a literary format, even different than just talking theology. It's a pretty simple Wizard of Oz kind of, Dorothy goes to Oz, like Kevin Flynn goes to Wonderland and comes back. I also think, of course, this is probably, we already mentioned it a little bit, but if I had to think what are the top 3 field goal, easy, tell people about how to figure out how to do film and theology, it's got to be The Matrix. It's got to be this movie. And I think I had a third one in my head, but right, there's or this 1978 Superman. That's what I would say, probably.
Or for me, it's Iron Man. Selfish guy.
Iron Man also, yeah.
With his own name, explodes him. He goes into a hole. A person gives him mercy, and he comes out a new creation, repenting of his sins. Right. That's one for me, just because it's a little newer. But this one, oh yeah,
yeah.
It's
I've opened we'll get into this later. I've opened whole teachings on film and theology by starting with, what if I told you this story? And I read the plot of this. I go through the plot of Tron in a very, very vague sense. And I was like, now what am I talking about? And it was like, oh, you're talking about the gospel. Like, no, I'm talking about the movie Tron, just to sort of bait and switch them. And so, so part of that is because of its simplicity. Something else I realized this time, though, I also think it was, for me, my generation, this is before the movie War Games. This is before the movie Terminator. It's like, this is the original Skynet. I didn't even realize it until watching it this time. But he was about to, they glaze over it so quick you don't notice. He was about to take over the Pentagon and the Kremlin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true.
It's like a throwaway line. It's the original Skynet. He was about to take over everything. It's the Matrix, right? I mean, it's like this AI. It's an AI story. I know it's not the first, because there are some weird 70s AI kind of stories out there, but that I think 5 people probably watched.
In terms of pop culture, you're right.
Yeah,
even it's kind of like when we went back and watched Dune and then reflected on Star Wars.
Yeah,
Go, oh, yeah.
So theologically, then I guess we can spin to that.
Mm-hmm.
If we look at theology ratings, what would we say in terms of interpreting this or being able to talk about this? Would we say it's diluted? Would we say it's carbonated, or my cup runneth over, as it were?
Yeah. For me, it's thoroughly carbonated. Even though it's the lowest hanging fruit, it doesn't do too much with its themes. But it's like one of the first lines is, "Do you believe in the users?" Well, of course. If there's no users, who wrote me? You have like thinking, feeling imagers of their creators running around trying to do the will or overthrow the will of their creators. You have an evil mastermind blinding their world, blinding their eyes, and you have incarnation and redemption after the ascension of the creator who has incarnate. So it's like it's so thick everywhere, and it doesn't say a lot about him. I mean, we're all on board with those same themes. It's just so clear if you have eyes to see and ears to hear. It's just wonderful for that. But then again, the plot's pretty simple. It doesn't hit exactly theological points. I don't even know if they were trying to make these parallel too clearly, like in terms of an allegory. But the maybe the language they used to connect to the Christian conscience was just so thick. It's just great for that. And I watched it with my little 5-year-old, and it'll be a useful conversation in the future here to say, oh, you know about Flynn, who wrote the programs and then talked to programs? Yeah. The logos, who becomes flesh? Yeah.
How about you, Soren? Same?
Yeah, it's definitely carbonated. It's got a lot of themes, but they're all very obvious and I wouldn't say surface level, but they're very clear and concise. So you can definitely have conversations about them for hours, but those conversations I feel like would lead out of the movie and into just the topic itself. So that's why I would give it that.
Yeah, here we're totally tied because and I'll just read. I have it put in Cinemagogue. I put the top 10 kind of things. I'll just read through them here. Right, you have it: anthropomorphized computer programs, software personified as people, find themselves living in a finite oppressive reality. So you've got if we consider ourselves parallel to programs, then you have the master control, deceiving people, telling them there's nothing beyond their binary existence. The users don't exist, so there is no God. Those who disagree are silenced, imprisoned, persecuted, and killed. One of the programs says, as you've already said, if I don't have a user, then who wrote me? We got basically, he's trying to make a very simplistic teleological argument for God's existence right there, right? Like I seem like I'm a product of design. Jeff Bridges' character then, he kind of comes in, the computer programmer descends and incarnates into the world, not by his own choice, of course, so you got a difference there, but he descends into their world and walks among them. He does miraculous, he heals, he does miracles, he keeps the ship. There's all sorts of fascinating things that he's able to do. Get a recognizer working again, things that a program shouldn't be able to do. Admits he's a user. Laurie's almost brought back effectively from the dead. And then sacrificing, What does he do? He sacrifices himself. He crushes the head of the master control program, like falls down into it.
True.
And then he ascends. So he ascends in a beam of light, and then the blue light is then it takes over and dominates the world, and he's sort of restores the digital world to and defeats the master. It's like, oh, okay. It's kind of hard not to.
Mm-hmm.
I got to think somebody in that production, screenwriter, director, somebody somewhere was a Christian in that mix. I don't believe.
Yeah. Gotta be.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
God can make these things happen. It was also the 80s. It's like things have changed over the last several decades. There were probably more Christians. There were certainly as many Christians in the industry. In fact, we just watched K-pop Demon Hunters for our last film at theology at my church.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And because it's a small world, I know somebody who's 1 degree separate from one of the songwriters who was a Christian. So it's like, all right, they're in there. They're in there doing things. And I think that's almost impossible to deny.
And the sheer amount of biblical literacy was a little bit higher in the 80s than it is today. So you could just borrow the language even if you're not trying to. But the ascension of the Savior and then the world afterwards is becoming fruitful. It's like, wow.
Yeah. I actually remember.
That free and fruitful is wonderful.
I remember when I was like 7 or 8 when I first watched this, and I even thought like he's doing the Jesus thing. He's sacrificing and cleansing the world.
Yeah.
So even back then, it's so clear.
Even a kid I was going to say, you could teach a kid film theology based on this. Or if they grew up in church or Sunday school, they're just going to see it themselves. That's why it's super important to have films like this that are kind of low-hanging fruit, as you said, Miles, where it's like, okay, let's start simple. Okay, you can see it here. We can move on to movies like Silence later, right? And have deeper conversations. But like, this is a good place to see. You can see these things in story. But before we get too deep there or discuss any more theological things, you guys have mentioned the light cycles and some stuff, but let's talk about other popcorn thoughts we had. Miles, you thought that it was definitely fresh.
Yeah,
so
it's fresh.
What else stood out just from a non-theological popcorn fun perspective?
I think Tron ran so that the Pixar movies could fly. It's like if Toy Story asks, what if toys had thoughts and feelings? If Cars asks, what if cars had thoughts and feelings? And Inside Out asks, what if feelings had thoughts and feelings? This is what if computer programs had thoughts and feelings? And it's really neat. What if the video games that you enjoy in the 80s, as you're pumping in a quarter, which, by the way, I looked up this week, what a quarter in 1982 would amount to in modern times, is about 80 cents that they were pumping in to play each game. It's like kind of a lot of money. But
I feel bad just thinking about how bad I played video games and how many poor programs I killed on the grid.
Yeah. Well, that's one thing. It's the one and done nature of these programs when they're killed makes me really sad when I watch the movie. The genocide of programs. It's like the implications that alone could have been a huge branching off. I know we're talking about popcorn a little bit before we get into theology, but it's crazy. But then the light cycles are really fun. Like there's a scene in the first one where I've been playing about how being slow or a little bit boring, but where the light cycles are quickly turning around corners, and it made me feel like the first time I watched Return of the Jedi, and they are like flying through Muir Woods, through the trees, and I was like, and when I was a kid, I was like, this is impossibly fast and one of the most exciting things I've ever seen. And I imagine that it was similar with the light cycle, so it's great. And then of course Flynn, which was fun. I mean, he really is like a proto Tony Stark, Star-Lord, where he's like cracking jokes the whole time. And I don't know how many heroes were like that beforehand. I didn't watch too many older movies, but I was just really surprised and entertained by that. And what's kind of interesting in this grand adventure is that Flynn, he is like a incarnate savior, but he's not the savior. Like the movie is Tron. He just comes in a part. He enters into the world, but he's helping Alan's program save the day. It's just kind of interesting that he's not the clear hero. I found that kind of fresh in terms of the story. Well, he's not the one.
They've kind of borrowed the Star Wars framework, right? You've got the Luke character in Tron, you've got the Han Swagger character in Flynn, and then you've got the girl kind of caught between a little bit. Yeah. Thankfully, nobody's sister, so that makes it okay.
Yeah, and then here, just one final thing I like about it is that it's relatively safe to watch with your kid. It's there. I don't know if this will make us explicit, but there's two dams in the movie that I could remember, and you could barely hear them. And this is one of the first Popcorn Theology movies that I got to sit with my 5-year-old and do father-son activity and then double dip and do Popcorn Theology with. So that was refreshing. This and Tron Legacy, that it's pretty safe. I mean, it really is on the G side of PG, and that was refreshing to me.
Miles, I think at one point somebody says, "Oh, my user."
Yeah. Ooh.
Scandalous.
Yeah.
But it was like, it's a good time. And so it's a popcorn flick. Like, I'd recommend it. I'm going to watch it again with my kid because he likes it, and it's relatively safe, and it's a good Popcorn Theology jumping off point. So popcorn flick, 2 thumbs up for Miles. Yeah, what about you, Soren?
Yeah, it's great. It's one of those movies that, like, you don't have to think too hard about, but, like, it's not also dumbed down. So you can just watch it and enjoy what's going on. The atmosphere, the colors, the light cycles are awesome. That scene where they're fighting, so good. I like the Legacy one better, but I don't know. They're both great.
Okay, so important question, Soren. Because you might disagree. Obviously looks more beautiful. I still like the original light cycle design better.
I think I agree with you.
Aha.
The sleek, small shape with the wheels. Actually, that reminds me, we always had a game that we used to play on our iPods, and it was with the original light cycles, and you just go around and fight in little tournaments.
Nice.
We did that for hours. So yeah, I do agree that the OG ones are far better.
Go on. Yeah.
But the new ones are more nostalgic. But yeah, it's a fantastic watch.
Nice. Well, I think watching it this time and admitting its flaws, right, as being an early 80s movie and genre films, sometimes people forget horror movies and even a lot of sci-fi. You didn't get big name actors until really the 80s started bringing that up. And then the 90s, it kind of kicks off a little more intense. And so I think the movie rides completely on Jeff Bridges' shoulders. I don't want to disparage anybody else in the movie, but even David Warder, who is a classically trained actor, he's kind of cheesy and stiff. And nobody else is carrying any acting weight in the movie except Jeff Bridges, really.
Agreed. Yeah.
The Bernard Hughes scene where he argues about replacing humans, which was really weird to watch now. Where you see Bernard Hughes is complaining about that that's going to take our jobs. Like all the AI conversations now about people losing jobs is like, this is eerily prophetic. But yeah, it almost like this movie lives or dies on his performance, which I didn't think in terms of Star-Lord. You're right. He's almost impish. I mean, at the beginning of the way he sort of like hops around and like hides from her and then jumps back out.
Is it Anton?
Yeah.
He sneaks up and scares her when they're in the middle of sneaking in. And I was like, this is crazy.
He's like Peter Venkman in Ghostbusters. He's like, it's that character that almost doesn't seem to take their situation seriously, even when it's serious. I'm glad that
he doesn't win. He doesn't win the love triangle. He didn't deserve the girl, even though he was heroic, Yeah. I think it kind of worked out. You know how when you see the end of a movie and you go, yes, that's the way it's supposed to end. He gets his company and his fame, but he doesn't get the girl. That attitude doesn't really get the girl, even though he was a little self-sacrificing. So it's fun.
But all the stuff, and like I said, I'm also compromised by the arcade game tie-ins. It was also interesting too. I was talking with my buddy Jeff afterwards. It does look dated in terms of effects, and yet we've come to a weird place culturally where now a lot of games are shifting simplistic. A lot of games on your phone. It's like oh, actually, there's a lot of stuff that does look like the light cycles in this movie now. Again, we've sort of come full circle to this simplistic versions of games and different things going on. Even things like somebody asked watching it this time, they're like, what is the purpose of the grid bugs? What was that about? Well, that was the arcade game tie-in, because you have to run around and shoot and fight your way through a bunch of these grid bugs.
It didn't need to make sense. Back then games didn't need to make much sense. Just
So that was your arcade game tie-in that didn't even matter. So as a kid, you knew what that meant. Nowadays, you're watching it's like, why is this in the movie at all? It's just the grid bugs are there. We better watch out. They might get us. We'll never mention them again. The end. I was like, all right. They were learning how to do that. Although, bugs in the system, I get it. You have a little jab there, but...
that literally came from one of the first computers that was giant. There was actually a bug in the system that messed them up, and they scraped the bug away, and then it worked. It's actually a bug in the system, and then that became...
That's not an urban legend? Do you think that's real?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Or it's an urban legend that I believe.
I'll ask AI.
The real deal.
Yeah, ask AI.
Okay, let's shift into a little bit more of a theological vein then, pour some soda, and have a little bit of extra good time with the theological aspects of the first Tron. I know, and they overlap. It's almost impossible not to talk about it because it's second one's an extension of the first one. Let's discuss the themes of Tron. Now, Miles, is there something we should cover first?
Well, I think that the thing about this is a lot of times there's theological themes in the plot is what we're looking for. But what's interesting is just that Tron, we've already talked about it, the world building of Tron is the theological tie-in, the strongest one. So just the fact that you have computers that were designed to fulfill the will of their users that look like them, made in their image in this world, and you have them wondering about who created them. You believe in the users? Yeah, sure. If I don't have a user, then who wrote me? It's like that kicks off the understanding of the program's self-identity. And so it just looks a lot like Genesis 1. In the beginning, God programmed the grid, and he made it suitable for programs to live, separated light and dark, water and land. And then he made, this 1, 27 and 28, so God made man in his own image. In the image of God he created them. Male and female he created them. And God blessed them. And God said, be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, subdue it, have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the heavens, over every living thing that moves on the earth. God created human beings to be the master control program over the world, underneath him, right? And so you see, one of the users one of the programs is even really excited about helping people, Ram. It's just this wonderfully touching moment. And so that in itself is just worth meditating on as Christians, I think. I don't know, do you guys have any thoughts, but just the world building is very Christian.
Well, I mean, I think this movie you think about a movie like Free Guy, very much inspired. Again, this exists in the wake of things like Tron. But even why some non-Christians are willing to answer the design problem of the universe by considering things like simulation theory, right? That maybe we are in some kind of coded universe that has a designer. And of course, in that sense, it could be like, okay, well, it could be like Flynn. It could be somebody, it could be a petulant teenager. It could, like, we don't know who's on the other end of us as programs in that sense. But that's literally become a credible theory now for some scholars, which is we almost are this scenario. So not even for the Christian parallel, it's like they've set up a great conversation about how we exist in the universe that could go all sorts of different directions. That's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, and so that alone is just I think the strongest thing in this movie. I was even explaining to my wife, I'm watching this 42-year-old movie that has this idea. 43-year-old movie. But for me, strongest theme that popped out is that the theme, in terms of the world building and the characters, the master control program, I think, is the strongest parallel for something in Scripture, is that we have a parallel for the devil. The MCP is a created being who attempts to exalt himself above his creator, as well as blind all of the creatures below him of the reality of his rival. It's like that's That's a description of the devil. 2 Corinthians 4:4 says this, talking about unbelievers. In their case, the God of this world has blinded the minds of the unbelievers to keep them from seeing the light of the gospel of the glory of Christ, who is the image of God. To stop them from believing in users, believing that users could incarnate among them. You even see that in, is it Sark? The minion of the MCP?
Yep.
The MCP says he's a user, and he's like, what? Oh.
The users even wrote you.
Yeah. And so he blinds them to the reality. And then in terms of exalting themselves above, Isaiah 14 and Ezekiel 28 are parallels in Scripture where a prophet is comparing a arrogant king or kingdom to rebellious spiritual creatures. And so what can be said about the king can be said about spiritual creatures, which could also be said, I think, about the MCP. So listen to this. This is a taunt that people could say to Babylon who's fallen. How you are fallen from heaven, O day star, son of the dawn. Day star is where we get Lucifer from, by the way. How you are cut down to the ground, you who laid the nations low. You said in your heart, I will ascend to heaven above the stars of God. I will set my throne on high. I will sit on the mount of assembly in the far reaches of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High. Then here's the taunt. But you are brought down to Sheol, to the far reaches of the pit. Those who see you will stare at you and ponder over you. Is this the man who made the earth tremble, who shook kingdoms? So it's this victory speech that Isaiah is saying. This is what the people of God will say in retrospect to Babylon, the great empire. And it's like, this is what the people will say. We could make a similar taunt to the MCP. You who exalted yourself thinking that you were going to take over the Kremlin and the Pentagon. You have been brought low by the incarnate user who came into the world and sacrificed himself in order for Tron to do what he needed to do to take you out. It's great.
Yeah. So you said you could run it 900 to 1,200 times better than, but they took you out.
Yeah, and then this impish user comes in and takes you out. You know, with gaiety would be I think kind of the way you put it. And so it's just kind of a wonderful thing. The MCP as the devil is just such a clear parallel.
Or King Candy from Wreck-It Ralph, technically, also.
Yes, that's I think one of the best parallels in modern cinema. You pointed that out to me. King Candy is great.
Dang.
Taking the throne, taking the crown.
Why? And he's warped a computer system at that point. And the same video he does, it takes a computer game and reworks it for his own methods. So in all these, it's amazing how many connections and how many of these same themes we keep exploring, even just with computer stories. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
So about you, Soren?
Yeah, and I think it's go ahead.
What?
You have thoughts on the MCP
and
the devil?
Oh yeah, it's very clear that that's the main thing. I liked how you put it where when you look at the devil or whatever, it's also something you can look at for just like rebellious people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's very clear.
It could be a kingdom or people or, we reflect it lots of different ways.
Yeah. That this was kind of similar to my point that I was thinking of for Tron Legacy, because it continues on the same idea. But yeah, in this,
it does.
It's very clear.
Well, what stood out to you then, Soren, in terms of themes rewatching at this time?
Yeah, I think the main thing I saw in this was Tron as the title. I've always been a little confused why it was named Tron, because he's not the main character. He's just kind of the side character to Flynn. But like, as you said earlier, it's Flynn assisting Tron in cleansing the system. And Tron is he's a program meant to wipe clean the system.
Yeah, and he's like fulfilling his destiny, his purpose.
Yeah, he's a created being, willingly creating out the wishes of his creator with joy and like passion. Like nothing gives him greater delight than to actually serve his creator, which was super interesting. And it's something that I don't think I've seen quite to that degree in any other movie. Like he just has a pure joy and desire to enact what his user told him to. And that's his whole purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah, like when he goes and sees him and communicates, like there's like that's where he gets, like you say, his passion too, because that's also when he gets sometimes he just seems very determined.
Mm-hmm.
But but that's part of the same coin, right? It's just the other side of the coin. He's determined, or he takes delight in serving him. That's cool.
Yeah, he's just...
And the excitement of, I mean, think about prayer, right? We get just access to the Father, and they had to go through all that effort to contact Alan 1.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Tron gets to, he made me for this purpose, so this is what we're doing. You know, it's so exciting to him. It's just great.
Mm-hmm. That's actually one point too, is like when he raises his disc, like in prayer at the end, it's the same thing he does when he beats the dude in the disc battle. So he's like, even in then, he's not taking the glory for himself. He's giving it to his creator and like thanking him. So he's like raising it in prayer and like thanks.
Nice. Yeah.
That's so funny. I've been in church my whole life, and from now on, when I raise my hands in church, I'm going to think of Soren's Tron analogy.
Let's go.
No, it's fun. I mean, he does that at the end of the fight. Now you mentioned that, but I wouldn't have connected those two pieces till you mentioned it. That's actually pretty cool.
Yeah, that was the main...
He lifts up his whole identity. All that you've done and all that you learned is lifted up.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah.
Wonderful.
All his identity. That is another thing I thought of, is when Clue is found and captured after he's... What was that? After he's in it to find the files or whatever, the only thing the enemy asks him is who is his user. They ask him nothing else. The only thing important about him is who he serves. Obviously, it's because he's a program meant to find a file, and he has no other use in world, technically, if you view it that way. But, I mean, are we not the same? We're meant for a mission, and... Yeah.
Who do we serve?
Amen. It's like Infinity War. Tell me, who's your master? What am I supposed to say, Jesus? When I saw that in the theater, I was like, yes!
Yeah.
That's exactly what we're supposed to say.
Yeah.
Well, it's you mentioned that too. I just steal a little bit from what I'm seeing in your stuff. He raises his hands at the end. Yeah, everything he's doing is for his user, and like the revolution isn't even just for people, right? That's different from a lot of movies. Like we love a lot of movies where the person's where a figure is freeing the people, and we would equate that maybe with Jesus freeing us. Mm-hmm. But usually rarely in those movies do you get a moment where they're acknowledging somebody, the vertical relationship. So like here we actually have a movie where the first thing he's doing it for is the vertical relationship. And that's pretty rare. We don't have a chance to actually have that parallel seen much in movies that aren't like an overtly Christian made movie.
Like only a patriotic movie where they're like serving their country, but even that is people, you know, I don't.
Yeah.
You get a little bit. What was fun? I didn't like the show so much, but Moon Knight had some wonderful things about being the avatar empowered by the God who's behind you and serving their will. It's like something kind of similar, but I don't know. I don't think I've seen much like that beside Tron.
That's true.
Maybe in our Facebook group, we'll figure out, put out something obvious to us.
One thing I also thought was interesting is like, why was he called? He fights for the users. Like, why do they need him to fight for them? That felt a little weird, but that's because like a revolutionary character, you'd expect to be, they fight for the people. They're a person of the people, but he's not. He's not fighting for the people. He's fighting as a representative of his creator, which was interesting. He's not fighting for the people because he just wants everyone free. He's fighting because he has a mission to set them free from his creator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's something that we sometimes skip over or gloss over, even when we preach the gospel or tell people about why we're serving God. Or it's like, ultimately, it's for his glory. It benefits those being saved, obviously. It benefits all of us who are being saved, but it is for his glory, his purpose. In fact, even on the biggest scale, like we're folded into his story, but we're folded into his story because God deserves worshipers and Jesus deserves a bride. So like the church is not the focus. We make the church sometimes the focus of the story when the church is a part of the story, but the story is about God and about his glory and about his son. Yeah.
Jesus says, you are salt and light so that people may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven.
So what Tron does can benefit.
Empower us.
It can benefit the programs. It can benefit the world, the grid. It can benefit all those things, but it is for the for the glory of the users. Yeah, that's very cool.
So in his bit, all hail Alan 1. But that's, yeah. Sorry, Lord, I just thought it was funny.
Now, somebody has a note in here about what Tron means. Who is that from?
What?
I don't know. Who put that in? That's wonderful. Was that you, Soren?
Where is this?
It says in Greek. Well, I'm gonna steal this point and read it.
Yeah,
Was that you? Go
I
ahead.
looked it up because I was wondering what Tron even meant, if it was intentional. And in the Greek, it basically just means an instrument. So all Tron is an instrument of God's use, of the user's use.
That's fun. Normally I'm pulling the dictionary thing. That's what this feels like when another host does that.
Yeah,
that's wonderful.
Been one up to Miles.
Yeah,
nice.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
I am a Tron of the
That's
Lord.
very cool.
So yeah, I was kind of with you before. I was like, Tron, he's not even the main character, like your observation. But you've moved me out of. They could have been called The Adventures of Kevin Flynn, in Wonderland or in Digital Wonderland, but. Tron.
Well, in one sense, it feels we can liken the Flynn character and almost make it a Jesus juke. But if you look at it more from the perspective of what you guys are talking about, like that's the Old Testament operates more like this. Like God or his messengers will come down and show up, but it's to empower the David, to empower the human instrument to slay the Goliath or slay the master control. Like you have Sark turned into a literal Goliath at the end, right? He's huge and tall, and he has to shatter the master control, and then he just drops.
Mm-hmm.
But in some ways, there's almost more of an Old Testament style to it. Like Flynn could almost be seen as a messenger or an angel, kind of like someone he comes down and equips and empowers. But ultimately, it is the program. It's the Tron. It's the instrument of God that gets to actually kind of deliver the blows. That makes it more Samson-like or OT-like or Moses-like, right? Yeah, there's more. Or honestly, now, right? But he empowers us. He empowers people here to win small victories, even though the war has been won by Christ. It is about Tron in that sense. It's juggling two very different. It's juggling an Old Testament school and a New Testament narrative all at the same time.
Yeah. So, like when in the Old Testament, people were familiar with other gods, they would say Yahweh is the God of gods. And so we could even go into. I just imagine me going into the programs and saying, "Okay, Flynn is a user. He's great, but." Let me tell you about the God of gods.
Alan is the user. Alan 1 is the user of users.
That's true, because Tron isn't even Flynn's program, which that kind of feels that he's just a messenger to help Tron.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. I just love in the end, he's a distraction, a valuable distraction, but it's Tron that saves the day. And I found that so refreshing that it's like the impish, fun hero. He's vital, but he's not the hero of heroes in that story. And that was fresh and interesting to me. It's been so long since I watched the movie, I forgot that that's how it played out. So it actually surprised me a tad 2 days ago.
Well, again, they're copying Star Wars, right? Han Solo shows up and distracts Darth Vader, so Luke can get the shot. So yeah, we won't give it any points for being original in that sense by any stretch. But we're appropriately picking on Flynn, which is good because that's kind of my theme. Which was just the idea of, especially watching it now, even though I'll make a case in the Synagogue book that you've got this Jesus parallel with Flynn, there's the other side, and maybe this is a bit of the reject, receive, redeem piece, is the idea of Flynn as a flimsy savior. Flimsy? Flimsy. Flimsy. Because it's something that works its way through both of these films, but particularly they lay it out point blank. There's that scene where you literally have Tron. He's like, well, you're a user. Well, then, of course, everything here that's happened so far and what you're doing is according to a plan. And he's like, well, I hate to tell you, pal, that's the way it usually is for users, too. And Sam will echo this in Legacy. But this idea of a creator being just as flawed as their creations, even a modern thought of God just sort of winging it, it's actually a surprisingly popular theory. I know this reading a lot of fiction and fantasy. Stories by Neil Gaiman and stories by like growing up in the 90s and different things. Like this is not an unpopular way to view God or gods, American gods and other things where like sort of revising the idea of God or gods to where he or she, right? It's kind of the way that they play this now. And maybe they're higher than us, but they still ultimately are, they're more like the Greek pantheon. We've reduced them to
Yeah.
Zeus and the fighting gods of Mount Olympus and the bickering and one-upping each other and creating havoc for the world below, or the grid called our world. I think that could be a bad takeaway, especially if you're young and you're not being taught. Like, oh, it's like God, like the up there, like he's just kind of shooting from the hip too. That's where it does set a bad precedent, where it's like, all right, I want to make sure that we caveat that anytime you talk about this film, lest anyone, I think even Christians, to be honest, like I've grown up in there are certain Christian circles where God is all powerful but not all knowing. Right? You got open theism, where God's growing and figuring out and learning because of us. And sometimes it's subtle in Christian teaching, and it's subtle just by some weak teaching. But I know some denominations who literally don't think God, they believe he's all powerful so he can deal with whatever comes next, but he actually doesn't know the future, which is at odds with the wealth of Scripture. We don't have to go deep into that right now. But I don't know if you guys, there is a real danger that this could infect your view of God. If you watch movies like this and let this same kind of idea percolate. I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking it or overplaying it, but that's like more of a concern now than I would have even said maybe 10 years ago when I wrote the book, when I wrote Cinemagogue. It's like, I'd want to underscore that because I think that's a disease that's even crept into Christian doctrine.
Yeah, so Tron, I think it's so thickly Christian in its elements and its worldview that it actually teaches us another popcorn theology skill, is to learn how to defend your theology or articulate your theology based on the counterexample. So saying, Flynn is a great Christ parallel, incarnate into his world, but he falls short of the Christ in these specific ways, which, spoiler alert, every Christ parallel, except for maybe Aslan, falls short in very specific ways, either in their nature or their behavior or their character. And so even as you're trying to watch movies with eyes to see and ears to hear, you go, oh, well, yeah, he's Christ-like in this way, but falls short in these ways. And then you can go, okay, as we're Christians trying to talk about this, who in our world views Christ or views God in this way? And so James is pointing out open theists. They solve the problem of evil by, it's God all-knowing, all-powerful, all-good, therefore evil cannot exist, right? Well, they just say, no, not all-knowing. To be fair to them, he doesn't know exactly which future is being chosen, but he knows all possible futures. So he has all knowledge, right? That's how they respond to it. We go, yeah, but that doesn't seem to jive with what Scripture actually says about him. Greg Boyd, is one of the proponents.
And we also know that multiverse kind of runs short story-wise after a while anyway. So
Yep. It's fun. This is what film and theology is about. Popcorn theology is about integrating your faith and your movie-going experience in a meaningful way. The movie doesn't even have to be good or bad for you to bring Jesus into the conversation and have it be fruitful. This movie just happens to be good and thick with theological themes that even a child can get.
Yeah.
So as we close Tron and move on to Tron Legacy, is there anything else we want to reject, receive, or redeem? I know one thing I'll just say quick was I felt like watching it this time in particular as Clue gets slammed onto the board and like who do you serve basically gets put up there, and then they're going to torture Dumont, and you see the faithful believers that are going to be absorbed, basically put to death. They even start seeing their skulls, which I was a little confused why programs have skulls, but
it's dramatic.
But it looked cool, yeah. And it just reminded me. It's like, oh, in receiving the idea of enduring under persecution. Just talk about Christians have endured far worse than we see in this movie. Like they have been strung up. They've faced an inquisition. They faced the logic probe. And Dumont and others was like, will we endure to the end like them, or turn red and become conscripts of the master control or of Satan? I was like, that's a good receive. Yeah, I was trying to think again, people who will die not just for a cause or country in a movie, but who are literally dying because they believe in something that is higher and to them immaterial, and their faith in users or God. It's like that. There's not a ton of that in sci-fi in particular. So it makes for a rare chance to have a sci-fi conversation about enduring under persecution for the sake of the eternal or the above or the higher. So it's like that's cool.
Yeah,
what do you guys?
I guess a parallel receive is Well, I was going to just highlight Ram's joy at being useful. I love that little bit where he's saying, it makes you feel good helping people, but Soren helped me picture it. Like, that's Tron too. Ram and Tron, just being joyful at doing what you were created for by your creator. That's a receive. That's a wonderful parallel. It's like, this is follow this. This is good. And look at what comes from the people who are submitting to their user's will, even their imperfect user's will, and joyfully helping people and redeeming their world. It's great.
I think it kind of goes off of your point, James. It's a twofold, because we reject the idea that the God and the spiritual things like are all entirely just like the same as us, just better, like just bigger. Yeah. They're different. They are perfect, or God is perfect, and God's creation is perfect apart from what is fallen. So we'd reject that this kind of hints at, but we would agree that, we would receive that there is a world above us that has more power, and there is a battle above us. It's just one side is perfect and knows everything, and the other side doesn't.
Yeah, that's fun. Man, your point bleeds really well into, we're about to get into Tron Legacy. It's like, as programs, you don't even know what the sunrise really looks like.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things. It's like, that's a really good point, is that it's not just another computer world above us. It's fuller life. We're seeing ones and zeros, hexagonal pictures approximating the real world, but there is a reality beyond it. Amen to that.
Yeah. Well, let's jump in our light cycles then and fast forward just 28 years, not all the way to the present, and we'll get to the sequel Tron Legacy. But before we do, or as we race there and try to outpace the recognizers, we want to encourage you to like and share this episode with your friends. If you like what you hear, broaden the conversation. If you want to hear more, subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Discord, those types of things. One quick way you can help support the podcast is just rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. But the best way you could do it is probably to support us financially through Patreon. Donating just a couple bucks a month will make you a patron saint. It gives you access to a host of exclusive benefits, including a Facebook group and special channel on our public Discord server. You can vote on future episodes. So if you want more movies like Tron, we're going to cover all of them, but who knows? There's plenty. We could cover other AI movies.
We fight for the saints.
That's right. And we also have In the Lobby podcast episodes you can get, and you can even join us live on certain recordings. So other than that, be sure to visit us and grab some merch in the merch store, and we'll be back in just a moment and enter the world of Tron Legacy. Cinemagogue, the Marvelous Era. James Harleman here, the Cinema Guy, announcing the sequel to my first book on film and faith. Let's face it, entertainment has changed dramatically since the first book published in 2012, and comic book characters and franchises are everywhere. So I decided to set my sights on superheroes and examine the evolution of Hollywood in this follow-up to the first Cinemagogue book. For example, what does Loki tell us about culture's view of God? Why does the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the Infinity Saga continually align with biblical themes? In the Marvelous Era, I review each film and show not only how the individual movies express gospel parallels, but each phase essentially reveals a multi-point sermon. I also explore DC, Star Wars, the Monsterverse, and more. Without compromising scriptural truth, we can sift these stories and discover how we might reject, receive, and redeem ideas for personal reflection and Christian conversation. Also, has Hollywood's messaging gotten worse? The book explores ways these marvelous mythologies correspond with conversion, Christian living, church history, and Reformation, but I do also highlight what has been the entertainment industry's darker, indoctrinating decade, as well as toxic fandom and the dangers of immersion in pop culture that just might drown us spiritually if we're not careful. So suit up, assemble, and join me on a journey to the Infinity Saga and beyond. Cinemagogue, the Marvel Us Era. Now available on Amazon.com in paperback, hardcover, and Kindle editions.
Hey, this is David, and if you're listening to Popcorn Theology, it's probably because you're interested in theology or movies, or best of all, both. And that means that you're our kind of people, sharing common interests with our listeners and viewers as well. So why not partner with us and advertise your business or ministry right here on Popcorn Theology? We're looking for great, like-minded sponsors and offer reasonable rates with a variety of formats to get your message out. Remember, our fans aren't mindless consumers, so they'll give you thoughtful consideration. That's a big part of what we're all about here. So for more information on advertising with us, contact feedback@popcorntheology.com.
And we're back. We can hop out of the light cycles and boot up our second film and download our thoughts on Tron Legacy. If you didn't already know, Tron Legacy was directed by Joseph Kosinski and stars Jeff Bridges, Garrett Hedlund, Olivia Wilde, Bruce Boxleitner, and Michael Sheen. Came out in 2010. How about a plot synopsis, Miles?
Yeah, so this movie takes place 20 years after the first one, and Sam Flynn is a tech-savvy 27-year-old son of Kevin Flynn, and he looks into his father's disappearance and finds himself pulled into a computer world of programming and gladiatorial games where his father has been living, trapped for 20 years. And then along the way, he teams up with the confident Cora, who is like a kind of a surrogate daughter to Kevin Flynn, and the son embarks on a journey across the grid that has become far more advanced and dangerous than ever before. Meanwhile, the malevolent program Clue, made in Kevin's image, plans to invade the real world and will stop at nothing to prevent their escape and escape himself into the real world. So this one's fun.
All right. So where are we at with the popcorn ratings on this one? Stale, fresh, or buttered and salted? Actually, let's do Soren first.
Oh yeah, it's easily buttered and salted. It's perfection. From the design, it's beautiful. The colors with the black and blue and orange, it's gorgeous. Even the vibes and atmosphere outside of the grid is still amazing and one of my favorite parts of the film. The technology, everything looks so cool. It's my childhood. It's so good.
Yeah, you're the buttered and salted rating that you're allowed to include nostalgia.
Oh, and the music. The music is so good. Daft Punk does perfectly.
That's true. All right, Miles, what about you?
For me, I'd put it on the salted side of fresh compared to the original, but it's just fresh for me. I enjoyed it. Didn't really go back to it too much, but the visuals are amazing, and they are the older they get, the more impressive they are. Because watching this yesterday, it could have been released today, in my opinion, except for the Uncanny Valley stuff with de-aged Kevin Flynn. But that was still a huge jump in VFX. Beside that, I mean, the light cycles, the grid, the way it was filmed, you're completely immersed. And then the music is phenomenal. It just, you feel it, and it's emotional, especially toward the end. And then, well, for me, one reason why it's fresh and not buttered and salted is the plot is somewhat unclear. There are some plot points that they don't really defend, they just assert, and you go, okay, I'll buy it, it's Tron. But even so, now that I'm a dad, and this movie talks a lot about fatherhood and the connection to your dad, it's like the ending of this movie made me tear up again. This has happened a lot more. The more I get into my faith and the more my son grows, it made me cry at the end. And it's like that's a good movie for me. And so I like solidly fresh Tron Legacy.
All right. Well, what am I going to do? We had two freshes and a buttered and salted for Tron. I think if I'm consistent with my buttered and salted for Tron, though, I got to go buttered and salted for Tron Legacy. I'm going to say I know it's not without its faults, but most of the faults I would say were in Tron were things about execution. Yeah, I think ideas in the first Tron are great. I think the execution is obviously dated and a bit lacking in spots and editing and some other things. But this, from the soundtrack again to the visuals, like this makes up in execution what Tron was lacking. And the only thing where I think Tron excels a little bit further than Tron Legacy is I don't feel as though Garrett Hedlund carries it like Jeff Bridges carried it. I think that he's not quite the dynamic character. Actors like him and Charlie Hunnam and some others, they're totally serviceable. But Garrett Hedlund's character is almost a little more Tron than Kevin Flynn. He doesn't have some of that he doesn't have the impishness. If anything, Cora stands out personality-wise more than Sam does in this movie. That could have been the script, that could have been the actor. I'm not sure who I'm going to fault on that, but it feels like our protagonist, he's serviceable for us to import ourselves into, but he doesn't have a dynamic personality quite the same way that sort of carries the film in that way. Soren looks skeptical, but
actually, I like Sam Flynn a lot more than Kevin Flynn.
Ha
He's cool. One of my
disagreement.
my favorite characters as a child, like
There you
Captain
go.
America,
Yeah.
certain people. Sam Flynn was up there and just like my favorite people in fiction.
There you
Watching,
go.
he was just so cool.
There you go.
Yeah.
So yeah, it grabs
He
your
was great.
generation in a way that okay. See,
One thing I like about the difference between these two characters in the first movie, Kevin Flynn is excellent on the grid because he's a good video gamer, and Sam Flynn is good on the grid because he's like a daredevil on his motorcycle, and I just kind of liked that. Right, he excelled in the light cycles, and it's like they at least kind of played with some of that in his character.
I think that's where I was confused. It's like on the grid, like it's like they're telling me he's sort of a wild child at the beginning of the movie, but he seems more like a Steve Rogers in some ways.
Yeah.
So it was, maybe it's just that bit of narrative confusion. Like, are you supposed to be the one or the other? Because I feel like I wasn't quite grabbing it.
What he is in this movie is, yeah,
I'm an older guy watching it at that point. It's not capturing me in my childhood like Kevin did in the first movie, right? So I think there's obvious generational when it catches you age-wise pieces at play in this scenario.
Mm-hmm.
I like this. This is my Batman reference time. What Sam Flynn is he's Bruce Wayne, right? He's like Bruce lost his parents and hasn't found his calling yet. And so it's like he's like Bruce Wayne who hasn't made a vow as a kid, but he's talented, he's wealthy, and he's driven, and he's got a strong moral character, but he doesn't have direction until, spoiler alert in this movie, what he effectively does is he goes into his father's world and pulls out his legacy and his vision. That's changed. It's grown since Kevin has been on the grid because that's part of his growth. But he comes out with Kevin's daughter, kind of, who is like assumedly going to be his wife, and a vision for, fine, I will take the mantle of my father's legacy. I don't have my baggage. And so it's like, that's what I see him as. And for what it's worth, this was 2010. So for me, Batman Begins in 2005 was it's just world-shaping movie. Then The Dark Knight 2008, and then we were waiting for The Dark Knight Rises in, was it 2012? And so, like, for me, that was fresh in my mind. So that's what he looks like, is Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
Bruce Wayne without direction.
I can see that.
And so he's kind of edgy and, yeah.
Well, you
So
almost just summed up the entire theological component there for us too. So I feel like
true.
Yes, but how do we feel about that? Well, again, are we thinking that this one is diluted compared to the first Tron? Do we think it's carbonated? Do we think it's running over? Where are you guys at with that? Well, Soren first as we did with this round.
I think it's carbonated again. It's good. It has almost more things than the first one, but it goes into them less in depth.
Yeah.
Maybe more in depth, but less clearly. Because like they're more complicated issues, but not as well rounded, maybe. So
why this movie is fresh instead of buttered and salted?
No, still buttered and salted.
Fight.
I'm sorry to attack your favorite, Soren.
Nice. What about you, Miles? So are you leaving
for me,
on?
that's why it's fresh instead of buttered and salted. It's carbonated, man. It's great, and it'll challenge the Christian more than the original one would. But I'm still not sure exactly what the movie is saying about life. I think I got some ideas. So its themes are provocative. You'll think about it. I've thought about the line "biodigital jazz," man, probably 20 times since I saw this movie for the first time. It's also interesting that the grid in this movie is not a shared space. It's purely Flynn and Clue's creation. It's only them. So the movie is mostly about him and his growth and his shortcomings and his relationship or lack of relationship with his son and the ISOs and stuff. It's about his legacy. And so it's, even though the movie's bigger, the effects are so good, but it's actually, the heart of the movie is about Flynn and his legacy, as opposed to he does save the world because Clue doesn't get out, but it's a little more focused on him. So that's interesting, but it's hard to figure out what this movie wants me to think or believe or wrestle with, although it's very fun. And again, I could watch it with my 5-year-old, and he likes the visuals in this movie better. I asked him about it. He's like, I like the bikes and the planes.
Oh yeah.
Yes. All right.
Bikes and planes.
What about you? What about you, James?
Carbonated as well. I mean, I think we're all in agreement. These movies, they serve a very specific purpose. So that's to bring up a specific set of themes, a very specific set of skills, and that's just wants to get those across. And so yeah, totally carbonated. I think that I have some thoughts about what it's trying to say. I feel like you're not sure what it said, but you just said it a minute ago, Miles. So we'll get to that in a second.
Well, since I wrote my notes and drove here, I was like starting to solidify. But yes, yeah.
And to your point too, I think both these movies are pretty incredible father and son movies to watch. And so,
yeah,
let's talk popcorn stuff. Just let's get all the popcorn stuff out if we haven't hit it yet. What else about this movie was specifically, like, we know soundtrack, effects, etc., etc. I'll agree, by the way. Honestly, I think its effects look better than a lot of movies that have come out in the last 5 years that are just with, shot against a green screen and then everything imported. There's so many, even though this is set in the computer world, like the Flynn's light cycles are real build, and even some of the tanks in the background and machinery. Yeah, the white one was the white light cycle was a real build, and a lot of the stuff you're seeing in a lot of the scenes is physical sets or physical constructs on the sets, so it's not all green screen stuff just layered in later, and that helps so much. I think it's a perfect blend that they mastered between 2010 and like 2015, and I think we've started to slip the last decade into just CGI sludge. But that's because we're cheating and using computers for our effects.
Yeah,
to go back to 1982 Tron. But is there specific moments? You obviously said the ending makes you tear up. So what else, Soren? We'll start with you, Soren. This is your baby. So, like, what are the moments that make it for you?
I think the main thing is like the feel and like the texture of everything in there, because like every item feels so similar but unique. Like when you see just like the ground, the shine on it, it's beautiful. And then like the cavern where Kevin lives, it's absolutely gorgeous. And every time I drank Gatorade, I think of the drink in there. The Tron, me and my siblings would always call it Tron juice.
That's awesome.
It's so good. And I was reminded by the last plane scene, because you mentioned that scene is absolutely amazing with the lights, the ribbons in the air.
They're spiraling, and the trail of light and the turret felt very Star Wars. Like, it felt like the first time you saw Luke climb into the Millennium Falcon, and I got him! It's like, that's what it felt like. They captured it. It's great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like everything about it is so good.
And you can keep going, but you can't top the music, because Daft Punk were huge fans of Tron. They were in it, and it just is unlike any other sound that you have in music or in a movie. I in particular like the design that there were hexagons all over the place. I remember listening to somebody talk about the design of the movie. We wanted to make it seem like it was designed by a single mind, a single mind that said, this is the most efficient shape. It's everywhere, right? And so you could tell that Clue had reshaped the world in this particular way. And that's what's just really interesting about it. And then apparently the suits were super expensive, super intricate, hard to charge, hard to act in, and they looked beautiful. They were great. Those suits are so cool.
They did just have them wear dots and layer. They didn't add that in later, like a lot of the later Avengers stuff. Like, the helmets are real. The disc is real.
And the glass of the gladiator.
You can feel it just by seeing it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
totally.
And that's why it'll stand up. This movie will look good, I think, just for the rest of our life. It'll be still good to look at. And it's like, that is an achievement, because in 15 years, the computing power has gone way up. And you can see even the gap, because they tried a really bold thing to recreate young Jeff Bridges, and it doesn't look quite right. The uncanny valley is there, but everything else looks so good.
But, I forgive that. I forgive that in the computer world, because I figure if he looks like a video game cutscene, that's because Clue is. Yeah. That's effectively what the stuff at the beginning in the real world is like, that's where it's like, that's like the one part where it doesn't quite look right with Jeff Bridges talking to his son at the beginning with Sam.
It's amazing how some things didn't look good. Like when a lot of the talking didn't look good, but there was a moment where he grabs him by the shoulders and shakes him, and the way his body really reacts like a face. I'm sure they put hours and hours and hours into it. It looks really good considering that it's not real.
Yeah,
from 2010.
I actually don't think that his face looks that bad. When I first watched it, I didn't notice anything. And even this time, It was barely noticeable for me. Because, the lighting...
First time.
True. But even when I watch
just
it
teasing you, man.
now, true, it's valid.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah. Maybe it's the lighting or something, but like the end scene where he's like pushing against the barrier, that definitely is visible. But other than that, I didn't see it very much.
And they were smart enough to not make him. It wasn't like shots right of his up close of his face. It was a normal thing, but they shot him like in strange light, talking to his kid. And it's like that's sometimes I think what the directors don't do for the visual effects teams is give them more help, to make something passable. But it's a really good looking movie. I mean, I will go back. I'll watch the Tron cycle scene every once in a while. Just the shot where he runs in slow motion and then jumps and transforms onto the bike. That's worth the price of admission. It was awesome. It was awesome.
Totally.
Good popcorn flick.
Well, for me, right in the middle, it's almost a midpoint in the movie, was where we see where they're at the club. Because I mean, obviously, Daft Punk is there. And it's that moment where they're in the middle of the fight and it looks like maybe they're going to lose. And then Jeff Bridges, shows up and kind of is down on the...
Why is this so good?
It's a superhero landing of some kind. And there's a moment there. I think that's one of the standout moments to me. I also liked how... Because again, you watch the original movie, it's like there's a lot of good ideas, but they didn't have the technology in 82 to realize them. You notice like there's so many things that are repeats. You get a repeat of effectively the Solar Sailor, a repeat even like Clue's big ship that he wants to take into the real world looks like the big ship in the first one. It's almost like they wanted to, this is what we always wanted it to look like. It was kind of going on. There's a couple tanks in the background, even though they're not the main things in this movie. It's almost like they remade things from the classic Tron to say, hey, this is the vision fully realized. So that for the nostalgic me, that was great. But again, going back to the club is where it really, when everything's chaos, Flynn shows up, and you also have Sheen, the guy playing Zeus / the club owner. And he's sitting there spinning his staff around, and he says, "Behold, the son of your maker."
Yes, Michael Sheen.
All right, Michael Sheen. He says, "It's like, all right." See, that's what clued me in to where this movie was playing with. To your point already, is as we dive into the theology side of things, it's like, all right, you have a son on behalf of his father incarnating into this world to save it this time. So it's like, okay, we're still trying to rock some of the same incarnational themes, even though then they run into bumps and story plot ideas that shipwreck them from being gospel parallels. Now you've got the son of the father incarnating into the father's world to seek and save. Just technically, it's his father that's lost, which has no godly parallel whatsoever. But you're still kind of playing with that same thing. So,
and it reminded me of Jordan Peterson always talks about going into the belly of the well to save your father from Pinocchio. And it's like, boy, I'd like to hear him take a crack at this about facing the darkness, But yeah, theologically, if we can dive into our theme.
Yeah, let's do it.
We'll
pour the soda, man.
The most
you first,
interesting
Miles.
part of this movie, I get to take it. The thing I've thought about for this movie for a long time is the isomorphs, the isos, the miracle is the big thing in this movie. And for me, it's like I've tried to figure out what this movie is saying with these creatures. Is it an argument for the simplicity and the ease of atheistic evolution? Or is it just a metaphorical life device to talk about workaholism and trying to be perfect? Like, because this was one of my first popcorn theology movies. I discovered James probably 2008 film and theology. So this would be a few years after that. The idea, like when Flynn is talking about the miracle, that life spontaneously emerged if the conditions were right, manifested like a flame, changed the world. Biodigital jazz, man. And it's like, okay, so what he's saying is that if the conditions are right, life will just emerge. Will just emerge. And like, I'm not somebody who beats the drum Ken Ham style about evolution is still silly or stupid. But it's like, this is a huge jump that you would just say this world will spontaneously create life that's more complex than its creator. And so it's just kind of interesting. The code is enormously complex and he's trying to fix it. And I just remember leaving with kind of a strange kind of taste in my mouth. is like, what's going on here? Because the first movie points to my life and my computer code, which we could say my DNA, which is one of the most complex things in the universe, right? Points to a designer or intelligent design. When you see language and code, points to a designer. And I think of all the fine-tuning arguments that we've had, the fine-tuning of the universal constants and the universal forces and even the amount of matter in our universe to make any life possible is astronomical. And even physicists say, like, you might think that somebody's monkeying with physics in order for life or even matter to be able to exist in our world. It's, as some people say, balanced on a razor's edge. And so I just thought it was strange the way this movie kind of flippantly said, life can just emerge. And I was like, oh, that's cultural assumptions of secular, atheistic, abiogenesis of life out of nothing. And I just kind of struggled with that when I was first watched this movie. And ever since, I was like, this is just kind of weird. And what does it have to do with the plot? And so, like, this reminds me, like, William Lane Craig has an argument for God's existence that points to the difficulty of even creating life or seeing life created at all. He says the fine-tuning of the universe points to an intelligent designer. The fine-tuning of the universe and life existing either exists because of necessity, chance, or design. And it's like, but there's nothing, we don't see that it's necessary that life exists. You can easily think of a world in which life couldn't exist because of different amounts of constants and quantities of physical aspects of the universe. Is it chance? Well, if you look statistically at the chance of life emerging on its own, it's like, it's not just a slim chance. When they say, like, oh, the chances of a protein making itself spontaneously from primordial soup is like 1 to the power of a number that is higher than the number of atoms in our universe, which is statistically a 0 chance. So it's not due to necessity, it's not due to chance, due to design. So I'm just borrowing this. I'm not an apologist. I don't master this argument. But it's like the first movie talked about, there must be a user because who wrote me? Then this movie says, oh, it can just spontaneously generate. And so it's like, biblically speaking, Paul uses this argument. He says God is plain to them because God has shown it to them. For his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world in the things that have been made. So they are without excuse. And so it's just something I think Christians should wrestle with, is that the assumption of this movie, in some sense, is that if the conditions are right, against life like Korra could just pop, give it enough time, enough cycles. And I just got really stuck with that. When I was just shy of 20 when this movie came out, I think. But I was like, well, maybe it's not actually making that evolutionary atheistic argument. Maybe Korra is just a parallel for something else. I don't know. If you guys wrestled with this concept, I'll give the floor to you guys for a little bit. What did you think when you saw the ISOs and that stuff in this movie?
One thing that I liked is that, like, the inherency of their appearance being a miracle is like, their existence was a miracle. Other than that, though, I couldn't really redeem that plot point that I could think of. Yeah.
It was just strange to me.
It is.
Well, if we're proceeding, and I'm just shooting from the hip here, if we're proceeding from the idea that it has to be a parallel where Jeff Bridges and Kevin Flynn have to be a stand-in for God or God the Father, then it makes that fall apart. I think it becomes, at that point, a reject for sure. If we step back, if we take another step back and say, okay, well, wait a minute, if we were actually human creators creating these things, God in his providence absolutely could have some kind of unintended consequence come into being. The miracle could happen and be like, wait, but we didn't do that. Like, we have somebody higher to appeal to like, okay, but he could have. If we're not actually in control, so if you take us out of the creator role as a strict parallel, like, we could try to create. In fact, what's happening now with AI? Like, what happens when AI gets to, not only when it starts interacting in ways that we don't plan, but what if it then generated or created its own AI? Or like, how many, like, well, we wouldn't say that that's impossible because we certainly aren't. We're not in control of it. We're not God. We could toy with something and we could do our own form of creation, and it could do something that seems spontaneous or miraculous to us. I was like, oh, well, God's in control of this ship, not us. So I guess if I think of it in terms of a rehumbling, we can only take this parallel so far.
Yeah.
At some point, our creation, human creation, could absolutely go awry and not be what we intended, or spontaneously generate something we don't expect. We would then put that under God's providence. It wouldn't be out of nothing again, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it's so fun.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, but like for me, it's go, okay, maybe I'm just going to let go of kind of my angst over this, letting in atheistic propositions, secularist views of abiogenesis, letting go of that.
My guess would be you're right. My guess would be, you know what I mean? My guess would be you're right, Miles. Somebody behind at the writer's seat was like, the first one was such an obvious, cheesy metaphor for if I don't have a user robot, like let's break this up. I can totally see that happening in a workshop room and the screenwriter and different things. Like, oh, let's break this up. Let's just have it be the true miracles when life just happens and there's no supreme intelligence making it happen. That's more beautiful. It's like, that's not biblical at all. That's a reject for sure.
So I think that's the thing I was queuing into that I didn't like, that stuck in my craw when I watched this movie. Is like, what's going on? And they didn't really land the plane well. But in this last viewing, it's like, okay, well, maybe the ISOs are really just what Kevin is doing when they're doing a flashback is he's got this company, he discovered the grid, and all of a sudden these possibilities of how he could achieve and build the perfect world in these dreams come to him. But when he's building his world, he's a fallible creator, and so one part of his world, Clue, that is his self, goes off in this direction that he can't control. And just prior to that, there was a miracle that he also couldn't control. And what he thought was the most beautiful, interesting part of his life was not compared to this miracle. I think Korra represents Sam. I actually think that, so he was focused on his work, his wife died, he was diving in, it's our destiny, right? His speech at the beginning sounds like Clue's speech, because it is Clue's speech. And so it's like, well, he even says what was perfect was really in front of me. Now, perfect, I thought in a theological sense, Sam's not perfect, right? But what he's saying, my destiny is my son and eventually my daughter that he saves. And so I actually think that this movie is, in terms of simplicity, Sam Flynn is singing Cats in the Cradle and the Silver Spoon, but it's biodigital jazz. He dove into his dreams and his hopes, and he lost his son because of it. And so on that level, all of a sudden tears start coming as a father. And this makes me think of Ecclesiastes, right? James taught us to divide all stories between life transcendent and life under the sun. One of the lessons at the end of Ecclesiastes, the teacher says this: my son, beware of anything beyond these. Of making many books, there is no end. How about of making many grids, there is no end. Much study is weariness to the flesh. The end of the matter is this: all that has been heard, fear God, keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. For God will bring every deed into judgment, every secret thing, whether good or evil. And the idea is, remember your maker, remember your purpose, remember things that you can't control, everything. And the real legacy is your son, and effectively your daughter. It's kind of funny that Korra and Sam probably going to get married. It's like, that would be kind of satisfying. Your protege that you did get to raise, and your son who you didn't get to raise, then create a family. It's like, that's not a bitter ending for Sam, or for Kevin, even though it makes me tear up that he only got to spend one day with his son before being destroyed and reintegrating with Clue. And so he has a happy ending there. But it just, normally I can articulate my thoughts about what I think a movie says much better. That's the thing that frustrates me about this movie. And the fact that they didn't defend the idea that if he integrates with Clue, they both die. Why? I don't know. He's you. But it makes for a good plot point. But I don't know. So that's the thing that frustrates me. Besides that, I love the movie.
Since he's back in Ares, maybe we'll find out there was a flaw in that too.
I don't know. If they don't have Sam in Ares, I started to like Sam. And the natural output is, what is he going to do with the company? Right? How is he going to rebuild after the Empire is destroyed? Sorry, wrong series. But what? And if they just skip it, I'm going to be bummed out. But so that's my thoughts. I know I rambled on a bit, but it's an interesting movie. I thought about it for years, but didn't. Biodigital jazz.
We'll come back to that in a second. But you talked a lot about Clue, Soren, and I know you have Clue on the brain.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Much like in the first one, Clue is the Satan figure, somewhat. But at the same time, he's almost more of a human figure. Because,
Yeah.
first off, he's a little more complicated than the
Master control program.
master control. That is just like some malevolent evil that just wants control for like no reason.
Mm-hmm.
Clue, it kind of represents, it feels like it's sometimes trying to say like it's Kevin's failure of a self versus like his success as a self in the future, or like wisdom in the future.
Mm-hmm.
But my take is that he represents both and us, because of course he's made in the image of Kevin. He's a program created in the image bearer, meant to steward and take care of the digital world when Kevin can't. Whereas with us, it's not because we can't, but it's because he wants us to. But in his greed and desire for power, he tried to supersede the creator. That's more points to him being a Satan figure.
Or Adam. I mean, in keeping with your "he's like us" theme, I mean, I think it could work. Yeah, it works. You're right. It works either way, because if we're made in the image and likeness of God, but we want to, what Satan's lie was, you can be like him.
Mm-hmm.
So Clue, like Adam, is trying to be like him. Like, I want the knowledge of good. I want to take over this role. It's kind of what's happening there. So I think it. Yeah, I mean, it could be Satan or the first man. It could be the first fallen man.
Or when any of us, follow the prince of the power of the air, walking disobedience, we take on his lies and his desires. Like, I bounced between Clue so he's an image bearer. He's like us in rebellion. But in some ways, he's like Saul, who thought he was serving the real will of his maker, but it was persecuting Christ. So that little chunk of time, it's like, zealous. Am I still to create the perfect world?
Yeah.
And then he, or maybe, an ex-Christian who's totally resentful. And I've liberated you from the false deity. I forget exactly. The users. The tyranny of the users.
Mm-hmm.
He's
deconstructing.
Deconstructing. He's not a clear figure. He's got all these elements of these different opponents of God. Makes him totally interesting.
Oh, yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
Go
on, Soren. Yeah.
Yeah. The main thing is like the speech where he's in front of his army is it feels like I've read it a long time ago. I watched a video about it, so I'm reminded. But like in Paradise Lost, when Satan gives the speech to the all the demons, like, they should be better than God. They are. Then let's go out and go into God's new world and take it and change it for ourselves. He's trying to be God, trying to take God's place.
Yeah.
You can't. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he can't really create, can he?
Yeah. Yeah. He can't create new programs. He can only destroy or repurpose them. That's the same thing with sin, and like all evil it's repurposed and perverted goodness that's been twisted. Same with truth. It's repurposed for your own downfall, for your own.
Yeah, I mean, that's deep Christian theology. Augustine said, that evil doesn't exist, right? You go, what? Evil does not positively exist. Evil is what we'd use to describe a good corrupted, or a privation of the good is the way it's often translated. And so it's like, one of my favorite examples of this is disordered loves is how he defines sin. So again, Batman reference, Mr. Freeze loves his wife. What could be more pure and good than loving your wife? Well, if it's exalted to the ultimate good, you become a Batman villain. And it's like, he can only corrupt these things, and he can only take what he received from Flynn and Flynn's misguided view of perfection. I mean, you tell a computer, create the perfect world. At first blush, it seems like a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
What is it when, I don't know if I stole anybody's thunder coming next, but when Flynn says he wants to go out into the real world, what's more imperfect than our world? Even I got that in 2010, being a fresh film theology. I was like, I would get the bullet then, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
And then Clue's new mission, opposite of Tron's, like you were talking about when we were talking about Tron, right? Tron joyed in exalting his creator, serving his creator. Clue adopted a new mission to usurp his creator. Out there is our world. Out there, what is it? Is our, and he drops it low. Is our destiny.
So good. And for me, that is both the representation of like his past self, but it's also like Clue's trying to be God in that moment. He's trying to imitate what he sees as the higher being and become that.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, it really is interesting to have a villain of a movie be your younger self, is effectively what they did. You know, and your younger self's ambitions, and the way in which your younger self and your younger self's ambitions get in the way of having a family, experiencing the beauty of the real world, right? That seems to be, Flynn got trapped by that, is really, I mean, there's something really profound in that message. Once you get past the crazy secular evolutionary argument for, and how tragic is it that Clue destroyed, so there's a miracle that he experienced, but Clue wanted to control and perfect the world so much that he genocided the miracle of life. He wasn't unable to experience the miracle. It was like, there's something really profound. Like when that skyscraper of Isos is being collapsed and Flynn is just turning away. Thousands of lives. I mean, I thought there's a lot of implications in this movie too about like Horton Hears a Who implications. A person is a person no matter how small. All of a sudden, what do you do with your old computer when you think that possibly it emerges spontaneous life? And so there's all kinds of interesting stuff that could be said there. But
well, and maybe in one sense, Clue is maybe part of the reason you're frustrated, Miles, earlier when you're talking about the movie not having a clear point or clear focus is maybe Clue's a little too close to some of us. And I won't say we're exempt from the same problems, but certainly a lot of non-Christians I know, they're not focused on, like, I don't meet somebody who's a 100% consistent atheist. I don't meet somebody who's 100% consistent. Even sometimes when they subscribe to other religions, it's like, honestly, like you see contradictions, you see like trying to pin down Clue, and even as we're trying to like, he's sort of like Satan or sort of like that. No, he's sort of like most of us without Jesus. Like honestly, there's a lot of complicated and even contradictory things in there. So when you translate that into what a character wants and even the plot of this movie, it's kind of like, well, maybe the problem, some of it's at odds with itself and unclear, is because we are like apart from Christ. Usually our motivations aren't. You can't just wrap them up in a 2-hour movie. Like usually they're fraught. They're fraught and they're broken in ways that don't quite align with any. It's not a straight line. This person is this personality. This is their problem. I can sum up in 30 seconds.
I have a friend at church who says that the two most elusive things in the world are Bigfoot and our own motivations. Is that we really are not totally in touch with things. And I do like, at the end of the movie is touching when Kevin Flynn is talking to Clue and he says, I'm sorry, perfection. I was supposed to create the perfect world. And he goes, but perfection is like, it's unknowable, but it's right in front of us the whole time. You don't know that because I didn't know that. And it's like, it's kind of like a good son scenario. It's like, I'm going to have to destroy you, but I'm so sorry. I'm responsible for your evil. Meanwhile, I got to let my other 2 children live, and I got to die along with you. That's super touching. I didn't really understand all the way to get there, especially the first 2 times I watched this movie. But in the end, it's like, it's gripping. Maybe it's Daft Punk that makes me cry because the sound is so great. But it's great. He only got 8 hours with his son, right? 1 millicycle.
Yeah. Well, and to me, that's where this movie, you mentioned biodigital jazz. And I think this movie is kind of like Tim Burton movies. And I don't know, obviously the style is quite different. But something you'll notice about a lot of Tim Burton's films is they're usually playing with a lot of ideas and not necessarily committed to one. Like you watch Batman Returns, it's like, is this a Catwoman movie, a Penguin movie, a Batman movie? Is it a warped version of A Christmas Carol? Is it making fun of old 90s Ed Wood films? It's doing all of those.
Yes.
And you're like, and so this movie, it's playing with this idea of sort of the incarnation. It's playing with the idea of the isomorphs like you're talking about. And then it's playing with the idea that really stands out the most to me. And it is the idea of a father redeeming his own life. And it's odd because it's not the only film. There's a lot of absentee dads, like 2009 Star Trek. They changed Kirk to have a father he dies, so he grows up just growing up without a dad, having an absent dad, having like that was right. Or there were actually, we could name drop it and spend some time there, but there's a lot of films right around that like 5-year period where they're dealing with this idea of absentee fathers, and so they have definitely removed Kevin from any sort of God or Jesus parallel. They've like it's a man who's constructing his legacy. Like he's constructed it, and he's spent time on that legacy. And here's where it gets weird and personal. And I think even I'll step into some testy waters here. I actually, 2010, I'm about 2 years away from walking away from my church that's been built up. I was part of a mega church that started. I was there when it was 150 people. The grid grew, and we had about thousands and thousands of people, and the lead pastor was going in the perfect system, and it seemed to be a little philosophically apart from what I saw was quite going on. So this movie hit me, and I was literally in that
for another podcast that we could rehash.
There you go. So then you have it. What's interesting, everybody. I won't be. We're talking about Marshall Church. Marshall Church fell apart. It's interesting though, and I'm not going to spend a lot of commentary, good, bad, or positive, or anything about where Mark Driscoll's at now. But I saw a recent interview with him where he talked about how one of his failures was he was focused too much on the church and not on his family and kids. That's like, ooh, that's almost a feedback loop, right, to what legacy's talking about. You've got a guy who's trying to build a legacy. On the one hand, he's trying to build it for his family and for the world, but he's invested to it to the point where he's missing what's truly beautiful. I think it's the idea of our dominion priority falling out of order or pattern. God gives us dominion as humans. We're given dominion over, fill the earth, subdue it. But we're supposed to accomplish that as households and families. And so it's the first devotion is to wife and children, and then whatever work or church or kingdom or God's people thing that he's given us to do. And Kevin's got out of sorts.
It's funny. I learned this from that pastor who said, Christian, husband, father, pastor, to a bunch of people.
Yeah.
Right? So you can preach it.
Yeah.
Kevin Flynn was mixed. He was like, I can't wait to show this to you, Sam. This is amazing. I'm going to help the world. It's a good thing that he was doing on the grid, but he lost himself to it.
Yeah.
And he didn't even realize it. So, yeah.
So it's just when our God-given dominion falls out of the proper pattern, and we've got those things out of sorts, and then he even has to go through, we don't have time to talk about this, but there's the whole idea of he's not abdicating, like he thinks he's philosophically taken himself out of the equation for the right reasons, and maybe for a time he had, but then it's like, oh, but he can't live there. He can't live in abdication. He has to come back out, and so at the end, to something as you said earlier, what does he do? He repents of his previous way, and he's repenting to himself in Clue.
Yeah,
he's trying to reconcile that part of him, and takes it back and reconciles it, and pays a heavy cost, right? And yet, what he's done is he's found his son a potential bride, and then he tells his son to leave and cleave. So now you've got the son shall leave father and mother and cleave to a woman, and so you have this idea of a man righting his ship. It's like my ship was out of sorts, maybe even kind of sunk. And together with again, the help and even input of his son and Cora, it's like he's able to get his dominion priority back in order. And before he goes, kind of his legacy will now live on through his son and his daughter. So it's removing him as deity and making him the fallible father, and then showing how a fallible father can redeem his own legacy, but then also provide for the next generation's legacy. And so even like she and he could change the world. She's an ISO now in the real world. He now has control of the company. Like he's got his son now back on the right track to take over the company. So he's put all the pieces in place, that's what we would all hope for. We would hope that God would help us to each do that with our lives and legacy, to be able to pass on what we've learned and to be able to do it in a godly and God honoring way. So I think that's where this film has a lot to say. But there is a jazz to it. It doesn't fit a traditional, here's the outline of what this film accomplishes. It is jazz. It's a way to say, well, I think the trumpet is playing this. I think the drums are doing this. So the jazz, the trumpet's doing a weird incarnational metaphor, but the drums are doing abdicated father redeeming himself. And
Yeah.
so
I'm glad I had this
it does well.
conversation. That sorts it out a little bit for me. I don't like it, but yeah, it is. It's one thing. I don't like it, but I am appreciating it as kind of a masterful thing. You know, the way they shifted some themes, and they took, they made an interesting plot for a sequel. I mean, it really is interesting. But
and it is the difference between classical music and jazz in a lot of ways too, from a story perspective.
So that's the key line in the movie is the jazz man.
The jazz.
Miles, spend a little more time knocking on the sky. Maybe we'll figure it out.
Yeah, knocking on the sky and listening to its sound.
That was a cool line.
That is almost awesome. I like it. Prayer. Like, it's kind of cool. He didn't have a Bible in that list of books. That would have been really helpful to him, I think. But he is still a pretty good hero. I mean, think he had committed himself to staying away for, I don't know, what is it? Let's just say at least 10 years, half of that. And in the cycles, it sounds like it was forever, right? 10 years times the millicycle equals 8 hours.
Oh, yeah.
So he's been there for like an eternity. His son comes and he's like, no, we're not going back. We're staying the course. And he changes his mind awfully fast for somebody who's been committed to one way of life. So, like, good for you, Kevin. Yeah, it's really interesting. I can give him some praise.
He doesn't change his mind. Cora actually changes his mind by giving. She almost becomes the messenger or the angel. Maybe the miracle that she is she is sort of the messenger, the angel figure. Like she brings to Sam what he needs and ultimately sends Sam, which then pulls the dad out. Like she gets used. And again, like whatever providence has brought her into existence and into the story, she's kind of the pivot point that actually moves them both into reconciliation.
You could argue that Sam is only one man and he's in a digital space this big, but God cares enough to send angels into his world to get him to move out of his apathy, not abdicate, to reunite with his son. Like, you could have some fun with that. But she's an interesting, powerful female character who, a lot of times, especially during that time, they were complaining that the plot happened to the women, right? Cora happens to the plot. She's got plenty of agency, even though she's kind of a child, but she's totally a hero. What is it? Super, very insightful, profoundly naive. I forget the way he describes them, which is just kind of beautiful. I forget what it is. I mean, that character is so interesting. So fun movie, interesting. I'm just, still just fresh for me. Y'all are crazy, buttered and salted.
If we had gotten an imminent if it had done better and we'd gotten a sequel, I think that stuff could have all been fleshed out. So it's frustrating. We've had to wait 15 years and we're not getting a direct follow-up to Legacy.
I think they had one that
Sadly.
was like Tron Ascendancy is what they were going to call it, or something like that. With Sam and Cora, how interesting would that have been?
That'd be so cool.
I would have been happy with 2 more movies with those same characters. So like a new trilogy of that would have been awesome. Well, before we wrap things up, anything else we should receive, reject, or redeem? Any final thoughts you guys had that we didn't get out as we're divesting ourselves of what we liked in the deeper mode?
I don't know about reject. You guys have something for reject? I have some receives and redeems, I think, but not reject. Quite so much.
We've hit on a lot of those with some of the bad ideas about bad ways you could take the ISO or the deity issue.
So the one thing that's bad, that's sad about Tron Legacy is poor Tron gets only a tiny part of the plot. It's a heroic and awesome part of the plot. I fight for the users. Yes, you do, Tron. Repent. Change from yellow to blue. That's awesome. And here's the thing. Alan is the hero of this world. Alan has saved the world twice. And how did he do it? By being a courageous employee in number 1 and being a surrogate father in number 2. That's really neat that Alan, was nice when I was 12. So Alan, this whole time, was a surrogate father to Sam. So he created 2 Trons. He created...
He's been the alpha this whole time.
Yeah, he's been the alpha. It's pretty great. So good job, Alan. I mean, he's not in it much, but he's awesome in this. He's kind of like, in that same time, it was kind of like a Lucius Fox, on the board, struggling with their direction, watching the world crumble, not wanting to share the secret that the grid exists, while knowing that that's probably where Kevin is. And then I guess another receive or redeem is that whole concept where the beacon used to remind all of the programs on the grid that God the Father was there, that the users exist. Like the fire on Mount Zion or on Mount Moriah, right? Yeah, Mount Moriah. What am I thinking of? What mountain did Moses go up? Oh man, I'm a pastor. It's Mount Sinai.
Wait, we're
I
talking
can't
about
believe it. That's recorded in perpetuity. That's my legacy. Popcorn Theology legacy.
Church discipline.
Mount Sinai.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the fire on Mount Sinai. That's what the beacon is like. And then she goes, I imagine that's what the sunrise was like. I know we were talking about this in the previous one, and he goes, no, there's no comparison to the real sunrise. And there's something really nice about the idea of, okay, we can create some cool stuff, but we can only, kind of like Clue, reappropriate what God has given us to work with. And we can only make like a cool hexagonal light city that looks clearly like one person created it. But God can create the sunrise and can create something even greater. And so this movie, even at the very end, preaches this. No matter how good our technology is, no matter how creative we are, there's nothing quite as miraculous and awesome as a sun or a biological sun, right? It's like it's kind of awesome in that we can be as creative as we want, but submitting to the fact that the ultimate creator creates the greatest art, or as we're saying, Popcorn Theology, this is really coming together, the greatest story ever told. It's like a pretty cool received part that I don't even know if they were trying to preach, but there's the stories that we can control and create, and then there's something beyond that is beautiful, and it's really bio-digital jazz, and it's the miracle. That's pretty cool. That's a pretty cool pickup for Tron Legacy. And so,
nice.
Yeah, thank you for offering this podcast. I didn't even like this movie before. Now I'm starting to really love it. This happens.
Sweet.
What about you, Soren? Any parting thoughts? Parting shots?
I would say, like, Redeem, we talked about it a lot. There's a lot of themes that you could mischaracterize if you watch this. So just all the individual themes, like, see it for what it says. Don't necessarily take everything. And there's multiple ways to view a lot of what's in here. That's what I'd say.
Yeah. That's good. Always receive, reject, redeem. Spend time thinking about that. Always have good conversation with friends. But as far as wrapping up on a legacy, I mean, that was also part of the fun of having 3 different generations of popcorn theologians and theologizing is we see that this goes on. This is the type of thing we want to go on, not just, we want healthy families. We want to see healthy churches. We want to see a lot of those things in the world and life, but we also want to see healthy engagement. And we want to see that passing on from teacher to student, from father to son, from church pastor to aspiring leaders, all that stuff, church members. So Soren, again, thanks for being on for the first time with one of your favorites of all time.
Yeah.
It
was great.
And we're getting ready for
Miles,
war.
I'm glad we were able to. Oh, that's right. And we will keep our fingers crossed for Aries that we will get another interesting entry that might not be everything we want, but might go down new interesting roads. And who knows, there's a 7 or 10-year-old could watch this one and fast forward a number of decades or two, and they could be doing a popcorn theology on it and talking about why it was their entry point. So that's the hope. Well, thank you guys again. And until next time, what is my line? Until next time, keep engaging movies and media from a godly perspective. And remember, you are not a mindless consumer. End of line.